Hello, we're here again on Sabaw On Record, and today we're with Quintin Pastrana.
Hey Carl, how
Hello.
are you doing?
Who is the founder and chairman of the LRP.
Hello to your
library.
great audience. Yeah, well, hello to
Renewal
your audience and
Partnership.
your listeners and your great audience. Thank you for having me.
You are also the president of We Energy Global and currently an ANC anchor.
Yeah,
and
We Energy
host.
Power Pilipinas. I run the local subsidiary, and yes, I am a part-time anchor and host at the ANC.
You are also the head of the rowing team.
Philippine rowing. Yeah, Philippine national.
National,
I
not the
don't
Olympics.
compete. I'm not that good, but I am the head of Philippine rowing. So we're helping promote the sport and also trying to get medals for the national team. Yeah. So yeah.
You're a Renaissance man, essentially.
Well, it's the flip side of having ADD is that you
Oh yeah.
you want to maximize life, but at the same time find connections among very, very disparate things, which is why I think I think the part of the upshot of having a learning disability is you can actually see connections better. That's the only flip side of ADD. So I tend to find few more connections than the average Joe on very disparate pursuits like this, and so far it's been a fine balance. So we can talk about that later.
I'm very interested in being diagnosed early on with ADD.
I was late, and
Late,
actually even that was a blessing, because I think the standard protocol or intervention is they'll give you meds.
Okay.
And that
Like
basically,
Ritalin.
yeah, that will basically numb your brain and slow down thoughts. Whereas when I was in the US doing grad school and I was diagnosed, interesting enough, after a David Lynch seminar on transcendental meditation,
Wow.
so I qualified for a National Institutes of Health study for grad students to go to learn how meditation can help you. And apparently the baseline was a diagnosis. So they said, the neurologist said, that if you had taken drugs, what had happened is
Early on.
yeah, your mind would sabaw yung
Sabaw yung utak mo.
and then what? So they liken the brain to a waterfall, and
Yeah.
they said that your thoughts are flowing more than the regular person. So the best thing to do, rather than stem the flow, which is hard to do and will hurt you in the long run, is to put a little power plant underneath so you can channel that power. This is a good analogy.
That's
right?
a nice metaphor.
Yeah. So and for me, meditation, to the extent that I do it regularly, has actually helped me channel that creativity and make the connections. More importantly,
Do a specific kind of meditation.
yeah, I mean,
that?
I'm sure mindfulness apps are pretty help. There are a lot out there, but I do transcendental meditation because it's scientifically proven.
Studies have
a
been
lot of the Ivy
conducted,
League and
so-
UC Berkeley studies and UCLA studies have shown that it really helps you with your thinking, your well-being, and at the end of the day, your creativity, which is. Quantum physics apparently, they study quantum physics and say this is unified field wherein if you are quiet and your mind is quiet and you use a mantra, you can dive in and get as much.
So basically,
out of
something
it.
to focus your mind.
Yeah, focus your mind and also draw your inner potential, because most of somebody said true happiness lies within. That's what David Lynch told us when I actually attended one of his seminars when he was speaking at Georgetown, and that's what led me to this, and that helped to turn my life around. To be honest.
Just going back a bit, you graduated from Ateneo.
Yes.
And then you went to Georgetown.
Yes.
And then you went for 2 masters in Oxford.
And Cambridge. So I was
And Cambridge.
overcompensating basically.
Yeah. How did you find the time to do all
no,
that?
I guess
is what I mean.
again it's a function. It's
Is it a function of
it's a
your,
function of the ADD,
ADD,
turned
okay.
I suppose more. You end up being more holistic about thinking.
Yeah.
So the idea there is like, okay, I'd be the last person to quote Oprah Winfrey, but I remember what she said. She said,
This is not a Georgetown education.
No, yeah, exactly. You end up quoting for pop culture or even then some. No, she said something I remember seeing, and that's what the ADD remember. You remember these odd things, and what stuck with me is like, you can have it all, but you can't have it all just at once, all at the same time. Diba? So I think the idea there is I learned to plan. I learned to see the connections as to how one can lead to the other. And so, yeah, the grad school MBA was really actually part of a development assignment when I was working for a multinational energy company. And what happened was being
This was Chevron.
Yeah, and being in a university that was very liberal arts oriented. That's like the mother's milk of Jesuit education, right? We call it Ateneo with better architecture, actually. And if you go there, I mean, there's a liberal arts program. So I entered a poetry fellowship, and so you actually have a chance to reset your life and learn more about more holistic things. The Jesuits call cura personalis. So that started my road to thinking it can't just be business. I love poetry, and then I qualified for the summer in Oxford, pursuing what I wanted to do, which is why I ended up doing a paper in libraries. So one thing led to another. A lot of it is providence. I really believe in a higher being, helping us for as long as we're trying to help the universe. And the connection started happening. And so those are the offshoots of that. Was I ended up studying a degree in international relations because my other company, the next company, sponsored me there, and I learned about international trade, which is very important nowadays in light of the Trump era,
yes,
and China and all that, and the Roden Belt and the debt trap. And so you
geopolitics.
Yeah, the geopolitics. You're right,
important.
Carl. Yeah, Carl. It's the biggest risk we have, externalities. And then literature was my last degree, which is the one that I love the most, and that's why that what got me into a whole amount of debt, which we'll talk about later. But it's the fine balance you want, and that way you can tell yourself, I think I've done everything I can, and now the next thing to do is apply it, which is where all these new pursuits come in.
I'm interested in that, Quintin. What do you see is the connecting thread between your work and your passions?
Yeah, okay. So thanks for that. I mean, and again, part of the learning disability is you will remember the odd thing. It's like a repository of useless knowledge sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's ADD, that's called it. I'm the repository of useless knowledge. But
Trivia.
but some of the trivia works. Like, for example, I still remember this quote that this professor told me before about in philosophy. Aristotle said that true happiness is the full use of your powers along the lines of excellence in a life affording them scope. That's my definition of happiness.
Well, if you quote Aristotle, then it's over, man.
I know,
it's over. That's it.
Mic drop. No, but seriously, I mean, that one really made sense to me, because at the end of the day, parang you want a life that, you want to scratch all the itches without, without bending backwards too much and losing focus. So at the end of the day, I thought I might as well experiment on what I like the most and see where the connections come in. And thankfully, I was able to get a scholarship to afford these things, study grants to do it, and within those things led to other connections. I figured the openness to these connections and the ability to see them ahead of
makes the causality
happen. And interesting enough, it comes from having a flaw. So
exactly.
So I remember this
one of my flaw.
Yeah, my favorite book is Robert Kennedy and His Time, which is a great 800-page book. And it's an arc about redemption and heart. And I think he had ADD also. He was like C student and all that. But the biographer said that his weaknesses were essential to his strength. So that's my
amazing.
That's my mantra and peg.
It seems like you spent like half your life trying to do that.
Yeah, I'm a very late bloomer. As you know, you and I do mixed martial arts, and I'm almost falling off the wagon with many injuries. In your 40s, when you start that late, it really. But at the end of the day, the curiosity never ends, and you learn it. And I think I talk about it. Jiu-jitsu and martial arts actually have a nice, or grappling has a nice metaphor to life and creativity. So that's even an ongoing journey right now.
Yeah, that athleticism is something I also wanted to ask you about. At what point did you say, let me try these things? And what was the sacrifice that you made?
Yeah.
Because again, you said you're not exactly a spring chicken.
Yeah.
And you have all these works.
Yeah.
And occupations to keep you busy.
Yeah.
And then you also have your passions. Then you're starting threading those, and then you add athleticism to it.
Athleticism is, I think it's a deal you make with yourself, because once you're 10 pounds overweight, I'm almost halfway there because of my shoulder injury. You make a deal with yourself and say, you know what, if you want to make all these pursuits, you've got to live longer. So, again, going back to the Jesuits, mens sana in corpore sana, healthy mind, healthy body.
Yes.
How do I get there? How do I stretch? How do I like myself in the morning when I wake up and I say, my God, you can't even fit into your clothes? Little things like that. Your tailor will never adjust your clothes anymore. These little things add up to the idea that, okay, this is the glue that holds it all, or this is the catalyst that makes you, or the enhancer that makes everything happen. So and I think jiu-jitsu, which I think is an acquired taste. I mean, I don't like some of the moves, but I love the concept. Is you're always finding a way against a way against a way.
And you're always telling me afterwards you take these concepts off the mat as well.
Yeah, you do. It's really It's a really nice metaphor for life, that everything is fluid, or like the father of mixed martial arts in Bruce Lee, like be like water. So the idea that you can be very you can flow into things and be as malleable.
Don't be static.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's funny. World War Z, which I saw the other day.
Oh,
it's a great film,
the
right?
Brad Pitt one?
No, it's a good film. It's a good
Yeah, it's
film.
a good film.
And the zombie genre never looked better.
That's
but
true.
But
The book is better though.
okay, great. And that one I will definitely read.
Go ahead.
I'm sure the line in the film was in the screenplay was in the book also.
I think so. Yeah.
El movimiento es vida. So movement is life.
Movement is life.
So the jiu-jitsu is like that. I think the pursuits I have are that. And the question really is more of, do you spread yourself thin or do you focus on these interdisciplinary things?
Yeah. When do you find that useful? I mean, when do you juggle all the balls in the air? And then
It's a hard thing to do, especially if you have a learning disability, a lifelong learning disability that you want to get drugs into. I think when you start, I suppose when it's the little touch points, like if I'm not getting 7 hours of sleep, it's very important because sleep is like a meditation also. And
do you still get the
now I
hours?
do, and if I get less than that, then I realize, okay, maybe something has to go or something has to pare down.
Something needs to be needs to fall down the
out of
wayside.
it or be streamlined, or like even an injury. An injury means that I was not focusing well.
Yeah,
So those little touch points, they're little signs of life, and your body is a good sign of it that says, okay, maybe you're stretching yourself too thin, so to speak. Yeah.
Let's change gears a bit and talk about you basically founded the Library Renewal Partnership, right? How did that come about?
This is a variation on a theme again.
Okay.
It was my ADD basically. So I qualified for an exchange program. Georgia has a sister college in Oxford, which is beautiful. And the library is actually it's such a beautiful library. I'll send you the photos. It's actually
Stolkeen's.
it's actually it's south of Lewis Carroll's college. It's west of Tolkien's college, and it's north of C.S. Lewis College. It's like the center of the universe, effectively.
Such good company.
Yeah, the most fertile place on earth, like I like to call it. And at the end of the day, what happened there was I was able to go to the library to finish a really tough. I was there for a term, so very concentrated. Parang trimester siya, parang Lasal trimester.
How long is it term?
Probably around 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
So it's not like a regular semester, right? So what happened is, 8 to 9 weeks, and in those terms, you're focused talaga on doing your papers, and every week you're gonna get skewered by your Don or your Oxford supervisor. So at that time, that new system wherein I was spending time at the library from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on days that I don't have these called tutorials or lectures where they're going to skewer you, is you tend to need a quiet space. So that library, that Latin library on the 3rd floor, where
that was your sanctuary.
That was my sanctuary, and then so basically that's how it started. I was going to do a paper on strategic alliances and public-private partnership. At that time, that was the heyday of those models, and I realized, why don't I just do it on library so I can be more interested in it, because I don't want to do it on business.
I mean, it's a template that you can use.
Yeah, it's a template you can use,
right?
diba? And then besides, I was in a library. I was in a university town that had more libraries per square meter than most cities around the world. And so I thought, why don't I try to find out why they have it here and why they don't have it in the Philippines, wherein people like me who need a quiet space, a third space, can get it, and why don't they have it? So that was the study. So that's a long and short of
that was
setting
the
up
motivation
LRP. And the paper basically found a methodology in terms of applying it, and then I experimented in Aklan, where I was from. So my summer vacation went to Aklan, convinced people to do it. Took a long time, but we got it right, and now we have 800 plus.
Yeah,
libraries.
800 libraries. Looking back on that, how many people have you impacted in
I mean, it's
how many people now have books to just read?
It's true. I mean, we're doing a study on that with the UP School of Library Sciences, which was one of our partners. But the idea there is that we think organically. We think that Bruce Lee thing about you flow like water, and more importantly, you have an ecosystem of people. Just like water needs a watershed, right? We have an ecosystem of partners that really do the heavy lifting for us. All I end up doing is connecting the right people, putting a framework to it.
Then the ecology will take it.
And putting a structure. You need a structure for an ecosystem, also a governing set of rules. So we have my sister's a lawyer, thankfully. So all the governance documents are there. You can download them off SlideShare. Madali na yan. So, and there's nothing like the power of example. So you have from Kalibo, which we took 2 years to build because we had issues with customs. We had the wrong business model. We learned from that laboratory, and thankfully it's my hometown, so they allowed me to make mistakes.
Citizen ka naman dito.
Okay. Or residente
ka naman dito.
And so what happened, and my grandmother was a librarian, so they gave me some slack, no? But what happened was we tweaked the model, and then we moved on to the next library. We experimented, and when partners kept on joining us, and then you have showbiz personalities who end up tweeting and all that stuff, that actually led to better promotion. We don't promote; they promote us because it's everybody has pride of authorship. So we've got a movement. It's not an NGO or a social enterprise per se. It's a movement, and we pretty much build a library every month. I mean, so
every month.
Yeah. Or
what is the most far-flung? Because you do remote places.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What's the most far-flung area you've so far built a library on?
We work with Abadzi and Batanes with their foundation.
Yeah, that's pretty
north. Yeah. For more than Apari. And the funny thing is they were at odds with the local government. So the library that Ma'am Dina, the former congressman who passed away, was setting up with her funds basically didn't push through. So there was an NGO called the Little Library, free library. So we stocked it with books. So that's our partnership with them. And then I think we have one in Tawi-Tawi in Sulu, working with indigenous Tausugs and Balikbayan Tausugs. A friend of mine who runs a renewable energy company also actually is building things there. So we work with them and Go Negosyo also, because it's part of their livelihood program. So it's been a nice partnership, and it's a partnership with all these institutions that really carry things forward. So yeah, we're corporate, and then we're now in Bhutan and Tamil Nadu.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So and that again,
so you're international
now. We're expanding, and that's also accidental because we had some customs issues. As you know, the customs isn't the most stellar.
Oh yeah,
isn't the most isn't the most what do you call this unsullied institution.
So Bhutan doesn't have its own initiatives for that.
It has Bhutan. Interesting enough, it's basically 1% of our population. It has 800,000 people. It's led by a king who is Oxford educated, looks like Elvis, very progressive.
Looks like Elvis?
Yeah, with the sideburns, kompleto pa yan. Okay. And very progressive. And they're the ones who stepped down so that the monarchy could turn the parliament. Oh. So they're very hungry for knowledge. English and their local language it's a bilingual policy. So, and they got the K-12 ahead of us. So there was an opportunity.
Developing na siya.
Yeah, a mutual friend was a travel agent, and basically he was also part of these reform-oriented citizens. And we struck a deal that if I brought more tourists there, he would pay every dollar for every dollar it took to ship books from our partner in North Carolina, all K-12 books, so universal. And then we had customs problems here, and we said, you know what? It's your loss, Mr. Customs, because we already have the deed of sale, deed of donation, everything is all put up. We ended up diverting it to Bhutan, and now after 3 months of it being there, cleared customs, no corruption. It was in 70 libraries. Wow. By the time we got there, with a contingent of tourists who were happy to pay that, and then we, on the side of visiting all the monuments and the temples, we actually visited the library, spot check, everything was there. So beautiful. Yeah, it's a universal connection. Yeah.
If you just get your energy right.
Yeah,
things will flow.
Things will flow, and
congratulations.
Hey man, thanks. I mean, and more importantly, it goes beyond me. I had this tough Jewish boss in Chevron, and I love him to death. But
you just had to say Jewish. Okay.
Well, tough and Jewish is basically tough on steroids. No, because I mean it's a culture I love because they have never taken anything for granted. Yeah, they've gone through a lot of stuff, right? I mean, the pogroms and the Holocaust and the current anti-Semitic war. But anyway, he was just saying that his life was like that. They never take anything for granted because everything was taken from them but their education. So that's one knowledge. But the last thing he told me before I left was, these are good programs because I was running a division there. But he said, you know what if one day you get run over a bus? And then typical sardonic, Brooklynite guy. What if who's gonna take over? You gotta have something that's ready for the next guy to take on. Because you're not going to be around for that, so it's got to go beyond you. So that was a great reminder for me many years ago to institutionalize. So the LRP team can at any given time take it over because our operating systems are on the web. The website is there. We've got a great set of partnerships and MOAs, and it's a goodwill. And more importantly, there are proof points. You've got 800 plus proof points that say we can build a library that doesn't use taxpayers' money per se, and we can make current public funds work with private funds and make it happen for good. I'm
sure just seeing the map and the pins on the will be impressive.
Yeah, we have to update that map.
There you go.
Yeah, but I think the idea there is we want to put a science to it, but net of it all, it's just the it's just that phenomenon, that conspiracy of goodwill that we talk about on the side all the time, Carl. I mean, the book, and it goes back to literature, which is why I'm such a big fan. So Jean Giono has this book called The Man Who Planted Trees, which everybody should give a shot. It's only 60 pages, so they can read it with wood cuttings in between. So that means it's probably
shorter than
40
Old
pages.
Man and the Sea.
Yeah, short, and more uplifting too.
Exactly.
And it's this guy literally planted trees. He was a widower. He became a shepherd, quiet all his life, and he rescued an entire town by just every day gutting it out. And
Grinding it.
yeah, and then more importantly, that legacy went beyond him, and nobody remembers who he is. His name is Elziar Bouffier, but it's a fictional story. The idea there is you do that, and the anonymous takes over, and everything is fine.
Same rules apply.
Same rules apply organically, and nature's your best, I guess, guide.
I think that's a sign to talk about We Energy Global now.
Yeah. Happy to do it. That pays the bills, and then more importantly, I think that's where
the alt energy sector now is growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in Chevron for the longest time doing clean energy because we were doing natural gas with the Malampaya project. We were the partners of Shell at that time, and at the same time, geothermal was the business here that Chevron had. So renewable, but very one kind of specific renewable. And We Energy is great. Full circle after leaving the energy sector for a while.
When was it founded? Just last year?
Oh no, actually, We Energy Filipinas was founded last year, but We Energy as a company is a Dutch company.
It's an old company.
Yeah, okay. Provenance is from the Netherlands. We have Dutch and now Japanese founders, headquartered in Singapore, and the focus is on Southeast Asia. A lot of the principles were from the World Bank, so very development oriented. We're not going to compete with the big conglomerates. We want to go the last mile delivery. And that last mile delivery of getting to an island or getting to a remote village was impossible 5 years ago.
Why?
Technology,
technology infrastructure.
Yeah, technology infrastructure. Moore's law happens to affect the way renewable energy works also. So solar panels, batteries are going down. Tidal power, which is the Dutch have great.
It's a Dutch innovation.
Yeah, modular tidal power made out of the propellers of ships rather than large big windmills that you see in other countries. Those things are actually innovation technology allows you to get the last mile delivery now. So a lot of people, we order stuff for online. That's the next thing for consumer. But for the consumer that needs energy, which is every consumer, you may buy a phone online, but at the end of the day, whether or not we buy something, we'll need energy, and that's really the fundamental part of it. I love the sector because of that. We don't need to brand it, but technology allows us to go there. So now we're in islands. Working in islands in Palawan. We're looking at Antique. Similar, I have team members who are going to Cambodia and Laos to look at same area, or Indonesia, for example, which is now a net importer of diesel because not everything lasts forever. So
interesting.
So that movement is happening, and Southeast Asia happens to have around 120 million people who don't have electricity.
Yeah. Are you primarily focused on that, or kasi some of those areas you talked about, are they necessarily off the grid, or are they still on the grid?
Good question, Carl. I mean, the mission is to do things off the grid because it doesn't make sense to put a transmission line undersea to service a village, or even if there's a resort there that ups the demand, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. So we do microgrids. So microgrids are the way to go. Those things take 2 to 3 years. All the government approvals take into account.
Before you can set it up.
So our business model involves also, because we have investors that want a good return. So we basically also do what we're good at, which is industrial rooftops. So we do schools. We do commercial buildings, and the competitive space there is big because a lot of people can easily get into that. The microgrid industry, it's a specialty. We're good at that. We're good at solar as well. So that's the kind of thing we do. So in the short term, we work with schools, we work with universities, we work with commercial buildings, we work with factories, malls, in fact, which are increasing in terms of their overhead because of the train law and because of the oil price hikes that are going around the world because of risk. So those things make our business model more flexible. We have long-term projects that will pay off in the long run and will help communities. But at the same time, we have industrial or institutional clients
who need it as well.
Who need it because power rates, even if Meralco is a very efficient utility, they're only distributing power, and if that power is sourced mostly from abroad, either coal or oil, which occupies a lot of the generation mix here, then you're really going to have higher prices.
So they see the bill. It's like what? can we have another option for
Yeah,
this?
exactly. So typically, if you have a rooftop or a dead space that we can use, and effectively
Pwede na
your bill
yun.
can go down 20-30%, and and as an investment, you get an ROI or an IRR of double digit, which is better than putting it in the bank or buying a T-bill.
And 30% is such a huge.
Yeah.
savings for them.
Schools have used it for scholarships. They've used it to improve the cafeteria and made it more, holistic food. I mean, it can happen. It's an enabling tool.
Just for context, Quintin, can you tell us the basics of what a microgrid is?
Yeah, a microgrid is basically, so everybody's familiar with Meralco, and people are familiar, let's say, with the
power
Avoides
grids,
generation, right? So effectively, and the transmission company, So we're actually all three. The microgrid has to be the generation, the transmission, and the distribution up to the households. And it's a special kind of skill because you need a lot of household research and relationships to be able to sign up all these households. Like our project in Palawan, which I broke ground in April, we have 650 customers that will be connected to us. We will individually connect them with meters, smart meters, and then we will also have the billing arrangements. Hopefully, we'll outsource that to a local cooperative. But that's a soup to nuts solution, because that area in the underground river, even if it's part of Puerto Princesa, which is a huge city, a great city, it doesn't make sense for the local utility called Baleco to put a spur line of 45 kilometers for a village like that. So we took over the microgrid. Philippines has a law called the QTP, or Qualified Third Party Law, that allows you to parang BOT it or outsource it for 20 years. We build it, they waive that portion of their area, and we give it back to them after 20 years. By that time, we as a company would have made a return. And and rather than waiting for 20 years, the village would have something.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I think big conglomerates are buying land there, so I think there's going to be a virtuous circle of growth. People will now have higher incomes, employment will higher. Fishermen there will have money to put up a cold storage, and there will be power to put up a cold storage, so they can get higher margins for their fish. So it's a virtuous cycle, and we're excited to see it. So I'm glad to be at this part of the energy revolution. That end of things, and things are moving
from being in the big energy sector, and then now.
Yeah, the small energy. That small is beautiful line that philosophy.
Certainly minimalist.
Minimalist is good, and then at the end of it, technology allows you to do things horizontally. So instead of as a career, I used to handle, a division which is doing government affairs for 3 power plants. Now you could technically, in the next 5 years, we could have dozens of power plants all around the archipelago, in other archipelagos around Asia, and it would be the same business model of helping people, making a good profit, but at the same time lowering power rates so that they can afford it. So it's a nice pursuit if it works out. So we'll see.
How do you see alter energy, solar specifically, balancing like our current situation, or at least keeping it in our favor?
Especially,
just on the ground level, makita mo, taas na kuryente ko.
Yes.
Tapos, ang daming add-ons na hindi ko maintindihan.
Exactly. Well, the nice thing about solar is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Germany and Japan are good case studies wherein households are actually generating enough power to export them into the grid, and they call the net metering thing, and they get paid back by the utility. We're not yet there. We have rules on that, but I think the utility doesn't really pay us the full market price. So there's no economic incentive to sell to the grid. But notwithstanding that, you can still get power enough to generate at least a good fraction of your household, and that will save your bills.
Like at nighttime, pwede mo i-power yung
well, if you have a battery attached to it. If you don't have a battery, then the load during the day is consumed by whatever you produce. And whatever you produce, if it's wired correctly, will be used by the solar. You'll use up the solar generation, which is a fraction of the cost of what you buy from the grid. And then the rest of it, once ubus na yun, or nag-full na yung capacity, then it goes to then you buy from your local utility. So at least we'll have a net reduction. And in the future, as solar gets more inexpensive, inverters get more inexpensive, then people will see there'll be an economic incentive to adopt. So that I think there's nowhere to go but there. But it's a question of just incremental adoption here.
It's a process.
It's a process, and regulations have to catch up. But at least the nice thing about it, you already have some users. Like, it's interesting, the Catholic, the CICM group, the St. Louis, which have the St. Louis University system, which has around 5 to 6 campuses. Half of them are already with our power. And, this is a Catholic school using renewable energy, the most high-tech renewable energy, because they saw the value of reducing bills. And more importantly, teaching their students, their engineering students, their business students, and their environmental science students that, hey, we've got a lab upstairs, study it. Diba? So,
I mean, just the fact that Catholic school run by
priests and nuns. They hired an accountant to see where the better deal we got it. But the effect there is the students have pride of place. It helps the enrollment. It lowers the bills. And even the engineers and the business people, they use it for their case studies. Like, oh, what's my IRR if I reduce the solar here, or how do I fix this inverter and this cable? You know, it becomes a nice laboratory. And
of course, it also reduces overall your footprint.
Yeah. So like a 200 kilowatt unit will roughly reduce around or over 50 hectares of. It would be the equivalent of every year of planting 50 hectares of forests.
Wow, that's a nice...
So more than the tree huggers and the tree planters, the renewable energy really does have a bigger impact on saving fossil fuels, and therefore is a good complement to the regular tree planting thing.
How does that convince the climate change deniers? Is that something that you should talk about to, like, how do the facts figure in an argument against, like, climate change is not real?
That's a great question. To us, the good news is the climate change deniers are a shrinking minority, and at the end of the day, they don't make the decisions, and like unless you're in the White House, right?
Yeah, exactly, and not already. I mean,
well, let's put it this way: look at policy. Look at policy in the U.S. Right? They've slapped tariffs on imported panels. Effectively, that's going to stifle competition in the solar and renewable energy industry, and it's catered to coal. So climate deniers have a nice inherent incestuous relationship with the fossil fuel industry.
Yes,
we can get into another podcast. But the fact is,
that is so true.
The fact is,
hello, Pruitt.
Well, Pruitt, yeah, the Pruitt doesn't fall far from the tree. but we can get stuck on puns all day. It's just, I think, for that end, that's really regulatory capture by special interests. Yes. If you end up going into an environment where there's a level playing field. And here, there was this thing called feed-in tariffs that basically subsidize the cost of renewables. They phased it out. That's okay because the costs now the cost of power, and if you get great engineering solutions, you don't have to rely on subsidies. The technology is getting more and more affordable. I was at an e-vehicle summit yesterday and saying batteries are getting lower.
I saw that.
A big component of the cost is batteries. If that goes lower, that really changes the game. Not just the panels, not just the charging stations. So at the end of the day, for climate deniers, they all also want to make money.
Yes.
So a classic example is, we have a great partner company in the Philippines who's working with us on the hybrid plant in Palawan. They were traditionally a conventional fossil fuel company, diesel, and that's what it needed, and there was no technology available to make them leapfrog. Now they're with us as a joint venture. They're getting exposed to all these technologies as well. So now the gradual shift from a company whose shareholders want to make a lot of money and realize that maybe conventional fuel is the way to go, is slowly shifting away to saying, hey, maybe we can start experimenting so that in 10 years' time, we would have made the gradual leap forward. Without sacrificing any stranded assets or costs into maybe a hybridized company. Big companies like Aboitiz, for example, are half and half now. They're half fossil fuel, half renewable. And that's changing because the economics are changing. So their shareholders... The green-minded shareholders are great, but the shareholders also want a return for their money. So now that I think any management beyond that company will try to convince the shareholders, look, the cost per unit of using renewables is actually at parity now, or even like getting lesser.
So this is an even nicer option for your money.
It is a nicer option, and plus it's not risky because renewable typically uses indigenous or local sources. Whereas if you're a coal plant, coal and oil are kind of tied together. So if something happens with a trade war, or Iran does something and North Korea starts saber rattling again, then commodity prices go up, and that will make your fuel price go up. So in the long run, it's very untenable. So the economics alone allows you to get a lot of climate skeptics. Maybe the deniers are stay in their own ghetto, but they eventually won't make the decision under a market enabled environment. But you see the majority shifting because it's not because it's the image per se, which is great, but the idea that costs are going to make it better, and
It
for an
seems like
investment, it makes it
such
easier.
a nice advantage in the argument, like, and will that spell the state in the future of renewable energies? Parang, is it just the economics? Is it also everything else that goes with it?
Yeah, it's everything. It's a nice package. It's a very sexy package. But more importantly, for the guys who control the funds, it is going to start getting appealing to them in terms of their returns. So for them, like I said, some of the funders are pretty much agnostic when it comes to where they invest the money, for as long as it generates a return. Here, they can be socially responsible, but at the same time have the returns that they would have in a more traditional, conventional industry that may not be around after 5 years. So yeah, so that's we're making that bet. So it's not yet there, but we're in early goings, and we think we'll get there.
Personally, do you feel more fulfilled now that you've come full circle, aside from the big energy, like? Micro energy.
Yeah, I guess so. Being in a leadership position with a smaller company, but we had friends in business school who kept saying, "Do you want to be?" Or my Pinoy friends who were in school at the same time was also after graduating. The line was, "What do you want to be ba? Ulo ng pusa or buntot ng tigre?" Diba? So in this case, it's small, but you make some decisions. And you make decisions that will eventually be in the long run. So being in a growth phase is great.
Is that comfortable for
That's
you?
comfortable. It also keeps you on your toes. I mean, it makes you less complacent.
Rather than complacent.
Yeah, getting to middle age, man, you can't be complacent. So at the end of the day, you try to do more. And I guess it's like being an intrapreneur, wherein you're running a company that's established, but at the same time putting it into new frontiers in terms of where the business is going. That's a challenge. So that keeps me up at night. But at least it's positive energy, and you have a, so to speak,
it's a good thing to keep you up at night.
And the purpose is there. There's something beyond you that says, okay, I just spoke to this fisherman in, let's say, Antique, and he's saying that I could do more for my fish catch and my seaweed farming if I had energy to thresh the seaweed at night. Very practical stuff. Very. Not because he wants to buy a karaoke machine, because they will anyway.
They will,
But I need to thresh the seaweed at night. So the more sorting I get done, the more I'll sell. And
the faster I can get it to.
Faster I can get it, and I can save on the diesel cost for this, so that the diesel that it takes for the pump boat, and eventually we might have e-boats coming out. We have Japanese investors who want to do the same.
Because I saw one of those Sabaw jeeps that are already
so boats will be the next one. So in 5 years' time, you can see that. So his mindset is like, I save more diesel from putting the lights on, so I don't have to use or gasera or whatever, and my eyesight's good, so I'm more productive, and then my diesel is just spent transporting it to the market. So then his business is a multiplier. So I remember those little conversations, all those little touch points. But where you and I, we talk about film and scripts.
Yes.
It's a small story. The small story to me is the appealing one. The small story of the fisherman and his family, making sure that he's very happy. Si Mang Tonyo, I remember. Si Mang Tonyo, who plans, as soon as he gets electricity, to buy enough lighting and ventilation so that he can thresh more seaweed and get it done. And of course, the karaoke machine, the refrigerator, and all that stuff will come in later. And that's good for us. But at the end of the day, that's empowerment. Then he doesn't have to get a dole out from the politicians.
So that comes full circle.
It comes full circle. So it's great. I mean, we're not yet there, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's good to be getting there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, that's why I like the journey more. I suppose meditation helps me more, and I suppose
the violence helps. The practice.
the controlled aggression on the mats helps every now and then.
And you also practice the katana arts, right?
Yeah, I mean, shoulder injury doesn't allow me to do it now, but Kenjutsu is a great way. It's a very quiet, as opposed to Kendo, which is very shouting all the time and a lot of aggression. This is actually the beauty of the tradition of the Japanese movements. I mean, it's just fascinating that's another catharsis that you can pursue, if only we had time, right? but I suppose just to wrap it all up, I think.
Yeah, is there for you right now? Are you more comfortable with the convergence in your life of the communications, of your work and the literature of the building libraries?
Yeah.
What is your connective thread, and is it now more concrete in your mind and in your in your execution of things?
Yeah, it's coming together. It's all falling into place. I remember one of my old jobs in government was we were working with a sociologist, and he was saying that, you know, that she's talking about language, and our Filipino language is such a great language, and we're very politically correct. We're shy, so it's shy instead of he and she. But the word I remember the most that she was trying to explain why you need to teach this to the poor in terms of the language as a way out is the word kahulugan is everything falling into place. That's the literal translation.
Literally meaning.
Yeah, it's falling into place, and that's what I feel. And words matter to me a lot. That's why, you know, we write for passion, right? So and that's also one of my therapeutic tools is writing. Yeah, the word falling into place is what it feels like. It's not just there. So the question is it getting there? And I feel yes. At this point in time, yeah, you could say that it's a good process.
What is your, because there seems to be a very different kind of creative energy running throughout your works and your passions. What is for you what is your best advice to give for people in industry, people in commercial ventures who don't necessarily feel that they're creative, but who would like to actually channel their creativity?
Yeah, I mean, oh God! So I'm going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to go back to 1994 philosophy class in school. I remember because there are three. If I get it correctly, Father Nemi, don't kill me. It's basically Homo faber, man who creates. Homo socius, man who relates. Homo religiosus, man who connects, not to God, but to a bigger thing, bigger themselves. We're in that stage right now. I don't even think I'm in stage 3. I have a sense that I'm doing this for a higher purpose. I don't want to be religious about this, but that's it. You have to be those 3 individuals. If you're just one, you're gonna be a cog in a wheel. If you're the other one, you're just gonna take selfies and Instagrammable moments, and it'll be as shallow as a pan. And the third one is you have to connect with something bigger. And that's the journey when you start going. We don't know what that is. What am I in the service of? Laurence Olivier once said. So I just feel that you're going to find your purpose, but you have to be open to it. If you realize you're 3 people existing in one person, and you have to develop those 3 aspects of you, then you have a fulfilling life. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in traffic, wanting to get out of this country, and then realize when you get out of the country, you'll still be in the same rut. It's just a different cage. So yeah, so that's basically it.
You're still bitching about the same things.
Yeah, and I was there. I was in another country bitching about the same thing. But until you realize, you know, you've got to be in the service of something bigger. The question is, what is it, right? And
that's what you need to find.
And typically, it's a pain point. It's something that bugs the hell out of you.
And there needs to be sacrifice in there somewhere.
Yeah, and the sacrifice will be worth it if you think it's a pain point that you like. In my case, it's like, sheesh, I don't have a quiet space to read. So I had the benefit of being, you know, a couple of years in grad school in libraries I love, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to fix this in the Philippines because I think there's more than just one person apart from me who wants to have quiet spaces, more than malls, more than basketball courts, more than, you know, the inside of a car.
Inside of a car.
Yeah, so or a cramped apartment. So the idea is that that's a pain point I feel passionate about. So I would rather spend my time fixing that pain point, and you know, if it helps other people, great. But for me, that's my satisfaction.
What a very revealing set of insights. Thank you so much.
Hey, buddy, thanks so much for the time, and you know, you're always thanks for bearing with me.
That's an awesome thing. Thank you. This has been Sabaw On Record with me, Carl De Mesa. Till next time.